Hello and thanks for tuning in to another weekly Ask the Stewards. My name's Cody Winnell and I'm joined as always by HRV Chairman of Stewards, Nick Murray. Nick, welcome to another show.
Thank you, Cody.
No worries. So we've got two items that we're going to look at today, and the first item, we've had a couple of emails on this one. It involved the start of a race at Cranbourne, Nick, on June 27, and it involved a horse called 10-4, driven by Chris Elford. So we'll roll the footage shortly, but basically the emails were asking about the start of the race. We saw 10-4 breaking the score up, was significantly behind the field. He was to start from barrier 3 on the second row, Nick, and by the time the horse caught the field up, just as the mobile was about to release, the horse had caught up but wasn't in its position on the second row. It was still about 10 or so metres away behind that second row of horses, but it was down on the marker pegs.
Right.
And then shortly after the start, we'll roll the footage, and you'll be able to see that the horse has come through on the inside. You see here it's getting underneath. That's our Miss Vivian, driven by John Justice, and Chris Elford's horse 10-4 lands 3 back along the pegs. Nick, can you talk us through that? You've seen the emails. What was the steward's response?
So the issue here is 10-4 Chris Elford's drive, which was initially reluctant to score up to the mobile barrier. Was a significant distance behind during the middle stages of the score up. It's interesting to note that Catcher Ruby also gallops in the score up, preventing Mr. Elford from shifting wide on the track. In the latter part of the score up, Mr. Walters, driver of Frosty Union, then shifts his horse in from a position 4 on the second row to take up the position vacated by 10-4. As the field is dispatched at the start, 10-4 is approximately a length behind the second row horses and also 1 off the marker peg line. So in that instance, Mr. Alford's required to be as close as possible to the position he's meant to be in at the start. After the start's affected, it's evident that 10-4 is then able to progress inside runners and take up a position on the marker peg line. Because
you can see here, can't you, that he's actually, I made a mistake in the question initially suggesting he was on the pegs. He actually was off the pegs, but he's got nowhere to go because the 11 horse is taking up, as you mentioned, his spot. Chris Elford's horse wasn't able to get to its position. Should the starter have maybe considered restarting, put the red light on and go again?
Well, ultimately, the starter's job is to try and effect a fair start for all involved. Mr. Alford was unable to get to the position that he was required to be in due to Frosty Union shifting into that position. Ultimately, if a false start was declared, that may have obviously avoided the subsequent issues as to whose rightful position it was not long after the start.
Sure, Nick, a few quick questions on the matter. In this instance, has Chris Elford broken any rules?
Mr. Alford being back during the score up is then required to be as close to his required position as the start's affected. As I said, he's approximately a length behind the second row horses as the start is affected and 1 horse away from the marker peg line. He can't shift any further wider on the track because that position has been fulfilled. Stewards ultimately placed 10-4 out of the draw for its manners at the start, and Mr. Alford was also cautioned for failing to be closer to his position, albeit the efforts that he did make late in the score-up.
And driver Robbie Walters as well, he was cautioned for being out of his position slightly at the start?
Correct. Mr. Walters, as alluded to, shifted inwards from his position 4 on the second row due to 10-4 being a considerable distance back during the score-up, and he was subsequently cautioned for failing to be in his required position.
And just for clarification purposes, Nick, if a horse has drawn, say, barrier 7 and bombs the start and he's chasing the field, does he have to chase the field from that 7 horses off the fence position, or can he cut the corner and get as close to his position as he can at the start?
It really depends on how far the horse is back during the score up. If the horse is close behind the field prior to the start that is affected, the requirement and obligation on the driver is to be as close to his required position as possible. Obviously, if the horse is 200 metres back and required to be drawn barrier 7, there's not an expectation that the horse would be extremely wide on the track when making up that ground. So it's not uncommon if a horse is a considerable distance back at the start that drivers trying to maintain a position close to the peg line to make up that available ground.
Sure. So thanks very much to all who put the questions in and asked questions on social media. That's what this program is for, Ask the Stewards. And Nick, that's really good, so thanks for your responses. This leads us to the next point, which is social media, because there was quite a bit of talk about this incident on social media, but there's a lot of talk about lots of things happening on social media. And in recent times, we have noted some participants getting fines or cautions for things on social media that they've said that maybe they shouldn't have said, Nick.
Right, yes. Cody, we have a social media policy for licensed participants, and it has some guidelines and expectations for participants when using social media and making any references regarding the harness racing industry. And we'd encourage participants to obviously make themselves familiar with that policy to ensure that they're aware of their requirements and obligations as far as their place in the industry is concerned.
For sure, and I mean, I've always worked in the media, Nick, and obviously now in this role at Harness Racing Media and Communications, and there is a difference. There's a difference, obviously, with social media, what it is compared to newspapers, but there's absolutely no difference or protection, is there, in, say, the eyes of the law civilly in Victoria. If you publish something on social media, that's just like publishing something in a newspaper, saying it on television or on radio. If you defame somebody, they can obviously sue you if they feel that that you've sullied their name, improperly.
Exactly, and the purpose and aim of the policy is to protect the interests of the Harness Racing Code and its participants. Obviously, it applies to trainers, drivers, stable hands, and owners, and it's a requirement to make sure that any publishing or making of comments are not detrimental or abusive, inappropriate, or improper in nature, to ensure that they're not going to put themselves in that position where potentially they could be facing the stewards, or more so something civilly. Exactly,
because it's obviously we have the Trots' position with the policy, but just in life there are general rules with regards to this sort of thing, and I guess it's not just in the Trots, it's outside as well, isn't there? There's rules for all of us, and it's not a knock on freedom of speech, it's simply a knock on defaming people unfairly.
Oh, exactly, and we're not precious in the Stewards department as to what some of the comments are put on social media. All we ask is that they're done in a respectful and reasonable manner to ensure that they do comply with the relevant rules and policy.
Exactly, and this is what I think this program is hopefully helpful for. We've got the email address set up, askthestewards@hrv.org.au, and if you've got any questions about things that you've seen or concerns that you've got, feel free to send those in. I know Nick's always happy to respond via email, or happy to discuss it on the show. So thanks again for watching, Nick. Thanks for your time this week.
Thank you, Cody.